All right, so let's get started. So welcome to today's webinar from JTF Marketing and our partner, Chili Piper. We've got Gaines on the call with us, so I'll give a quick introduction to it in a second. But today we're going to be talking about maximizing Marketo using some form-fueled success. So how do we get more out of our forms? How do we squeeze those conversions and start those conversations quicker than before? We've got some tips for you as we go through the session today in order to get that underway. Just to give you a quick introduction, so for those of you who've had an invite from the JTF marketing side, we are specialists in Marketo. We are a global organization supporting quite a few Marketo customers across the globe in different use cases. So from scaling the Marketo implementation to getting the integrations correct, and importantly, how do we make it all work? How do we get the results out that we were promised when we purchased this chunky piece of software, and how do we make sure that we can then keep optimizing what we're doing and drive and always on. So anywhere you are, we are able to support you, and really excited to be sharing some of these tips today. As I mentioned, we work across a big range of customers within Marketo, and I have always had this view of the Marketo landscape that anybody can use Marketo for any kind of business, and it can work in various use cases. And we've seen organizations who work in the travel sector through to insurance companies, through to private investment banks. And it's really interesting always to find out some of those key challenges that you guys may have surrounding Marketo and the technology itself. The use cases obviously vary, right? So things that we help our customers with are not only about how do we go in and build a project or deliver some technical integration, but actually how do we also educate your team in maximizing this technology? Or what does a good campaign look like even? How do we optimize for better results? And how do we squeeze more out of our marketing spend? Because this is the challenge we all face, is always trying to get as many marketing leads as we can through the door, start as many conversations as we can, and of course, attribute all that success back to these marketing people who work extremely hard. Gaines, I'll pass over to you to introduce yourself and also talk a little bit about Chili Piper.
Alrighty, thank you, James. Hey guys, I'm Gaines Murphy. I, before Chili Piper, coming up on my 6th year here. The company's 7 years old. I was at Marketo as a CSM. But yeah, Chili Piper is at its core a scheduling application built for primarily B2B sales teams and people who need to schedule meetings. Primarily if you work with Salesforce, which a lot of people who work with Salesforce work with also Marketo. And a big piece of that is team scheduling, but also integrating with things like your Marketo forms on your website, being able to allow someone to schedule a meeting or start a live call, doing account-based routing to route to an account owner in Salesforce, all from your website with usually a snippet of JavaScript that you can place on your Marketo form or on your contact us page. But yeah, we're about 7 years old, 8 years old as a company, and yeah, do a lot of form integrations with customers. So I'm excited to talk some more about that today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us. So I guess just to give you an idea of what we're going to cover, we've kind of hinted already, we're looking at how do we squeeze more out of Marketo forms? How do we get the conversions out of those forms? Because it's important not only to focus on how do we make sure that people fill out the form, but importantly, once they've filled out a form, how do we speed up that process from time of conversion to sale? And that's often the big challenge for a lot of marketers, because we have this kind of complex process of handing people over. We'll look at a few examples of how you can accelerate that process, and importantly, some tips to make that happen. Really pleased that our partner Chili Piper is joining us today just to share some of their insights and some of their customer testimonials on what success looks like. And then we're going to go into the weeds if we want to. Again, feel free to ask any questions that you've got in the Q&A section, and we'll answer those as we go. And importantly, we'll have some time at the end as well to ask Gaines lots of questions about how do we get more out of a Marketo and Chili Piper integration. Now, I have to confess, I am a fan of both Marketo and Chili Piper. For those of you who don't know, I've been around in the Marketo space for about 14 years, using Chili Piper now for 2 years, which is really exciting. And it started as a pilot project for us, actually. We were sitting around going, okay, we've got all these leads coming in. What do we do with them? How do we make it easier for ourselves? Because as an automation company, our goal is always automate more stuff. And sometimes we can get carried away with the automation, but ultimately, The goal is how do we get more conversion, more conversations, and free up some time. And again, Chili Piper has helped us do that. So I'm going to share with you my experiences of building in Chili Piper into our business, and importantly, how do we integrate that with Marketo as well. So there's something really important about forms, right? So conversion data isn't just about volume, it's about quality. And we often talk about this in marketing, about how do we get better quality leads because the sales team don't like them, or the silver spoon didn't arrive with the caviar, nicely piled on it, and it wasn't the most expensive caviar that came through either. So again, we have to look at the database that we have in Marketo and understand how do we improve the quality of this database overall. Now, we've spent a lot of time over the last, I would say, 18 months talking about data quality, data hygiene, data validation, and there's a ton of resources on our website. And there's one here that I'd point you to, which is Discover the Must-Haves of Marketo Data Hygiene. There's loads of tips in there about how do you improve overall data quality in Marketo. There's a couple of different elements that become really important when we start talking about Marketo forms on our website. We've got to think about how do we make sure that we get valid data into our database, and importantly, how do we activate it as quick as possible? We all know the buying journey's changed. We all know the customer behavior has changed. The important thing is about time to response. So when we look at engaging people within our existing database, this can really help us. And I talk about this always from two angles. There's the new people arriving into our database. How do we make sure that they're good enough quality? But the second side of that is actually how do we also engage the people who are already in our database? And tools like Chili Piper can definitely help with that. We all know the biggest challenge with Marketo is license fee. It goes up every year because there's a nice contractual fee in there that tells us the price goes up every year by a hefty percentage. But we've also got to control the size of our database and make sure that it's relevant records. So you'll see the second point here on this slide talks about unengaged records. So the people who are in our database not engaging with anything. So if you want to, go away and fiddle in your Marketo instance right now, go and create a smart list under your database or under your marketing activities and look at the people who haven't filled out a form in the last 90 days. Look at the people who haven't opened one of your emails and haven't visited one of your web pages. You're going to be really surprised about the data that you will see that are unengaged. Now, there's multiple reasons for this, either not picked up into existing campaigns, or they've been through a campaign funnel and they haven't been brought back into a recycle program. Really, really important. Now, there are some easy ways and quick wins to re-engage these people, of course. Drop them into some nice engagement programs, start some outbound activity using maybe the Chili Piper magic link, which we'll talk a bit more about later, and getting people to engage with your sales team. Again, it might just be getting them to download something in the first place, get them involved, get them engaged, and drop them into those nurture campaigns. So getting this data quality right in your database will help you boost conversion rates. And I know it sounds nice and easy when I say it like that, but cleaning up the data isn't that complicated in Marketo. There's a few quick wins. Go and have a look at that download. It will point you in the right direction. Now, when we think about forms, there's lots and lots of intelligence built into Marketo by default. You'll see the screenshot on the right-hand side that shows an example of a pre-filled form on a non-Marketo landing page. And for some of you who are sitting around going, hang on, didn't this disappear? It did disappear, but there is ways to make it work. Now, when I talk about actually how do we improve forms on our websites, I'm not going to go down the conversion rate optimization path, which is basically 3 to 5 fields. We all know this. We've been there for long enough doing digital marketing that we now know that is the standard. If your form is longer, you're going to see a lower conversion rate. Everybody knows it. These are other tactics that you can now deploy. Things like progressive profiling for top of the funnel engagement. How do we build up the quality of a lead over time in order to improve data quality, personalization, segmentation, et cetera, et cetera. And this is about building up the profile of that individual over time, not in an instant, not asking them 50 questions, but over a course of maybe 5 to 6 emails, slowly exchanging value for data points. Now, this can also be done through behavior on email. So I'm not saying that everybody needs to fill out a form and fill in data points. We can be smart about how we do it. Separate topic, there is a webinar that we hosted once upon a time on forms as well. So definitely go and have a watch of that, which talks around all these tactics. When we talk about pre-filling, of Marketo forms, this is really important because actually we shouldn't be asking people we already know and already have in our database to fill out another form. We should be helping them, aiding them through that process by pre-filling their information and allowing them just to simply submit the button. Now, pre-fill will normally get you a 50% improvement on your conversion rate on any given form, which is pretty cool, right? Because that might be 3 people up to 6, it might be 300 up to 600, whatever the volume looks like in your website. But the real clever thing that you should be doing on Marketo forms right now is using something called the known visitor form. Now, this is squirreled away in the background of a form in Marketo, which is really, really cool because it turns the form into a button. Stop presenting a form to the customer and show them simply a button. So you'll see this nice mock-up here on the right-hand side, which shows us a register your place. So probably some of you have had an email from JTF Marketing. You've clicked through that email. We already know who you are. You've just clicked register my place or register your place. You've actually filled out a form at that point, but you didn't know that. You've just seen a button that's got your name above it saying register your place. That's using known visitor forms, and in our own experience, we've seen over 600% increase in engagement with webinars and downloads by using this tactic. Now, again, there's another great resource available to you, which is when to gate and when not to gate using Marketo forms. And this has been put together using some best practice guidance across a range of industries. So definitely go and have a look at that. So we've got this person being created into the Marketo database. They're being created through a Marketo form fill. We then get this age-old process of lead management and routing, sometimes with manual intervention in order to get people to the right individuals, the right teams, the right experts, to then start a conversation. We then start reaching out to them manually through emails back and forth. Hey, can we have a time to speak? Oh, when are you free? I'm next Thursday. Oh, I can't do that time. I've got to pick the kids up. I'm doing the school run, or I've got a doctor's appointment, whatever. It becomes a nightmare. And therefore, the lead that was hot once upon a time starts to get colder and colder and colder. So we end up in this kind of no man's land of either silence, or in a meeting's already booked, or it's no longer interesting for the candidate. And then we actually get sometimes, not always, a CRM update, which tells us we've had a success. So from a marketing perspective, it's really, really frustrating because we can't identify whether we actually had the successes that we actually wanted. Now, in a new world and a simplified world, we can actually automate a lot of this. And this is where Chili Piper starts to play a vital role in the creation of conversations. So we get the same process, the same start point. Someone's engaging with one of your Marketo forms. A new person may be being created in your database, or an existing person may have an engagement updated against them. And then as we fill out the form, we've got a Chili Piper pop-up, which we'll have a look at an example. Gaines will share one with us in a second on what does that look like. So we'll start to build the conversation straight away. Hey, you filled out our form. Let's book a time to talk now, whilst you're here, whilst you're on the site. Not just the thank you message, but actually let's get to booking the conversation. As that meeting time is selected, or the date and time, it's then booked, automatically routed to the relevant person. And importantly, then the CRM is updated at this point. So we know there's a meeting booked. The meeting invites are sent automatically. There's obviously a range of other brilliant, intelligent stuff that happens in the background from the Chili Piper perspective, reminders and so on and so forth. And then as an output, as a marketing team, we get to see the call status. So it's logged, they turned up, they didn't turn up. Therefore, we know what success looks like. So for those businesses who are driven by appointments, marketing qualified leads, or sales qualified leads, whatever terminology you guys use internally, in order to prove that marketing are generating anything, this is a really valuable tool to show we've started these conversations. We've entered these people into the pipeline and we can track them from there. Now, Gaines, I'm going to ask you if you can share your live example, which is really cool for the guys on the call to see here.
Sure.
So let me pass over to you to then share.
Thank you, James. Yeah, and so it's a little kind of a side story. My first gig out of college was an SDR at Marketo. So first getting into the space, and people would come to the Marketo website, fill out a form to talk to Marketo, and me as a bottom level SDR would get a email alert for an act now or an MQL, SQL, and say, hey, go call this person or email them. So I try to call and email them. A lot of times they didn't answer. I called maybe on them the next day and they didn't answer. Then 2 weeks later, maybe I heard back from them. But what Chili Piper made it possible to do is you just click the form. Our forms are integrated with Clearbit Forms. That's why it's a little bit shorter, which is cool. There's two tools, Zoom Info and Clearbit Forms, that allow your form shortened. That plays into what James was saying, that helps decrease the level of form fields. But once I fill out the form, we had a little widget run, and then basically it presents an option for me to book a meeting with someone right away. So then I can just say, okay, I'm going to click for, okay, 12:30 on Thursday works for me. Great. Now I booked a meeting with Alex Franco. And so what's going to happen now is I'm going to get a calendar invite for that date and time, and then it's going to write an event activity to Salesforce, and custom fields will write to Salesforce, and then sync back over to Marketo to let Marketo know that a meeting was booked. So to tie it back together, instead of me having to go as the prospect, get called and emailed, when I'm not necessarily ready for it, I can just choose a time right from here. So as a prospect, it's more convenient for me to be able to just grab a time to talk to someone about whatever it is I'm looking for. And for the sales rep, instead of having to do all that work and chase people down, they just get calendar invites on their calendar and wake up in the morning with a calendar full of meetings.
And, I think one of the wonderful things about Chili Piper from a Marketo form perspective is often the routing is done manually for a lot of Marketo forms in the background, right? We get these people into the database, they're part of a program, they've engaged, we've maybe changed their statuses as part of a program. Now we've got to wait on someone picking it up and actually starting the engagement. One thing that we found really useful, especially with a lot of the promotional content that we produce and is promoting it through social media, for example, through LinkedIn, is that Chili Piper is natively mobile ready, which is brilliant because for those who've looked at Marketo forms on mobile, they can be quite painful to style and get into the right structure. But actually, Chili Piper is ready to go, and you've got that example here on the right-hand side. We've obviously talked about the reduction in friction in the process and starting those conversations. The routing, again, it's probably worth talking about how does the routing work in Chili Piper, because that's probably one of the most intelligent pieces of the calendar booking tool, right? So it's not just about booking appointments, it's about getting you to the right person.
And yeah, I would agree that that's probably what differentiates us and is very special about Chili Piper. I'm sure there's things like Calendly in the space that allow you to book, but what's really special about Chili Piper is the ability to take the inputs from the form. So for example, if you guys noticed on that form I was showing, there was what CRM do you use? And then what was your company size and your region? So basically we take those inputs from the form, such as, we only work with people who use HubSpot and Salesforce CRM. If you have like Pipedrive or Microsoft Dynamics, we can support it, but it's real hacky. So basically, we don't allow people to book with our account executives if they don't have Salesforce or HubSpot. And then based off of the country, we can basically go to our European reps or to our US reps. And then we also have company size that is being enriched in the background because we split up our sales team based off of SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. So basically, we have this routing engine that, it just looks like a little calendar pops up, but really there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, taking those form inputs, but then also checking in Salesforce to see, does this lead or contact or account already exist? Are they already owned by somebody? Oh, this account for Amazon, for example, is already owned by our top sales rep. Let's not round robin between the team. Let's just show the calendar and book with the account owner for the Amazon account. So as far as respecting business rules, as far as territories go, account-based routing, round robins, we do all the above, and I think we do it pretty well too. So it makes it so that it's not just some calendar that pops up that's going to go in anybody. It respects your existing territory rules, which is pretty much required to work with a lot of customers, such as Marketo customers who have this complexity into how they distribute to their sales team.
Brilliant. And I guess one of the other things is, I often refer back to ourselves as an organization who work across a range of industries, right? So people who are working with Zoom, people who are working with Teams, Google Meet, there's a range, a plethora of meeting tools these days. And again, the integration that Chili Piper has got to those main tools is really, it's native. So it makes life a lot easier. There's no messing around with, I could add the meeting booking link or I forgot to add it in. And, I've experienced pain with other meeting booking tools that have struggled to manage multiple options even. But the power of Chili Piper here, of course, is we can serve up multiple options, right? What call preference do you have? Which one do you want to work with? Do you want us just to call you back right now? There's lots of intelligence here that you can maximize based on your organization's preferences as well. So we talked earlier about these kind of non-engaged people in the database as well, right? And often we get asked, what should I do with this data? How do I re-engage it? What's best practice? Best practice obviously differs per industry, per business, per profile, per ICP, per everything, right? So everything's going to be different every single time. But I often look at this in a really simplistic manner and say, okay, we've got this bunch of people in the database. We know that they're not doing anything. So how do we get them to engage and actually do something? So if we're marketing to them, we're getting them to engage with stuff on our website, we're maybe driving relevant messaging and pages and content, etc. You can also use this idea of converting existing data by triggering off sales emails or personalized emails using the Chili Piper magic link. Now, the Chili Piper magic link is pretty wonderful, actually, because again, all the clever stuff that happens as you fill out a form is actually happening through a single link. So when we go into Marketo, we're adding this magic link into our emails in Marketo. It's doing all the background checks. Who is the account owner? Where should we route it to? What time zone are they available, et cetera, et cetera. And again, as we go through this audience and start to engage, and we maybe fire out a single email that says, hey, is it worth us booking a call? As they go through that same process that we talked about before for a brand new person coming in, we're getting all the information we need. We're actually starting to be able to say, we can send an email in order to drive conversations and track the results back into Marketo, into a program, and say, we sent 100 emails over the last 24 hours to these people who've engaged with this specific page, and they've turned into calls. Our conversion rate is X. That's pretty powerful when we start looking at the engagement across an existing database. Again, you might actually also choose to do this in the lead scoring context as well. So maybe you'll get to a certain threshold of the score, and it's the age-old thing, right? What is the right threshold? Maybe you'll take a random sample in Marketo and say, I'm going to take 25% of my top percentile of lead scored leads, and I'm going to fire out this email and see if we get some engagement, some conversations started. Again, this is looking at ways to how can we engage the existing data that's in our database without having to generate more? How do we get those conversations started? And equally, one of the things that is really important is when we do a lot of webinars, and we run one every 2 weeks, for example. How do we start to follow up with them? How do we start to get more engagement off the back of a webinar? It's always the big question, I think, for marketers is how do we do more with the people who've engaged with our webinar, who've sat and listened to us talk about a topic or a theme for 30, 45 minutes. Again, you can use some of these automated processes within Marketo, including those magic links, starting to start those conversations. And one thing that's been A/B tested quite regularly is whether you would have a prominent on-demand review or rewatch link versus a prominent sales message. I haven't got any stats on it at the moment, but it's definitely something we've been testing and starting to play with to see, can we get conversations started off the back of a webinar? Is there more conversation to have, more exploration, more knowledge sharing? And again, how do we do that in an automated fashion in order to see whether it's great having everybody turn up to a webinar, as you guys have done today, but how do we make sure that we track that through and start some sales conversations ultimately?
Yeah, so I think this relates into what a lot of people do with Marketo. And what I've seen is like people utilize the campaign object in Salesforce to basically track different things. Like I sent out this email, I want to see how many people opened and clicked it, or I'm doing this event and I want to see how many people registered, or a webinar and I want to see how many people registered and then attended. But then ultimately you may want to say, okay, well, who booked a call, and then potentially who became a sales opportunity. So with the combination of Marketo and Salesforce and Chili Piper, you can basically have Marketo form saying, okay, I'm going to set this campaign as, and then set the member status as registered when they fill out the form. But then afterwards, once it's attended, if they get one of these smart links that James is referring to, if they end up booking a meeting afterwards, you could update that member status to booked. So therefore you have your reporting in Salesforce, and that's in Marketo too, that allows you to see like, okay, I had all these people in this funnel, and then let's see how many of them moved down to the lower stages of the funnel and ultimately converted to a sales opportunity or closed one opportunity. Furthermore, proving the value of what you've done is with your webinar event that you've paid for or hosted. This is a good example. I know Toast is a people you do your payments for at restaurants and stuff like that. They previously used another less intelligent scheduling software called Calendly. And so what they wanted to use Chili Piper for is they do territory-based routing all across the US for basically every zip code in the United States has different restaurants, and they have different territory owners based off of that. And so they adopted Chili Piper for about 500 users to allow people to self-book from the website, but then also to nurture leads who do certain actions on the website. But then also when someone, when they talk to an SDR, they then get transferred to an account executive via Chili Piper. Then once they close one the opportunity, they then get scheduled with the onboarding rep using Chili Piper as well. So their customers basically get the same experience across the entire customer journey, from coming inbound to becoming a customer to scheduling a support call in the future. So one of the things you can see here is they increase their speed to completing a kickoff call and scheduling kickoff calls by 25%. They also use Marketo to send out their reminders based off of the person who, is gains at Chili Piper is about to book meetings with. I'm going to send that through here. And saw a 19% decrease in no-shows by doing that as well. So, having a tool that basically can work across your various teams, give consistency to your customers, I think for me is an important thing to kind of have some familiarity. And Toast is a great example of that, of a client who's taken advantage of Chili Piper with some great results.
If you'd like to learn anything else about Chili Piper or JTF Marketing and the services that we provide, we'll both be following up with you in order just to share with you some additional information. And yeah, feel free to book a call with us. You know how the form works now. So you can come through and schedule a call with us at a time that works for you guys.